And now I'll stay at the podium and we'll continue on for the main event, the presentations by our invited experts. Based on a coin flip that took place earlier, the con side will go first, followed by the pro side. Representing the con side is Dr. Kevin Sabet. Dr. Sabet has worked for 3 U.S. presidents, President Clinton, President Bush, and President Obama, in the Office of National Drug Control Policy, the ONDCP, the Drug Czar's office, if you will. Drug control strategy, he's the only drug policy staffer to have served as a political appointee in both the Democratic and Republican administration. Dr. Sabet is the author of Reefer Sanity, 7 Myths About Marijuana. If you, I want to get a signed copy, by the way.
No problem.
I need to get this signed. It'll cost me. And he's been featured. In addition to the book, he's been featured on the front page of the New York Times and in virtually every major media publication and news channel on the subject of drug policy. Dr. Sabet is currently the director of the Drug Policy Institute at the University of Florida, where he's an assistant professor at the University of Florida College of Medicine's Department of Psychiatry. Dr. Sabet is president and co-founder of SAM, which is Smart Approaches to Marijuana. He's also a policy consultant to numerous domestic and international organizations through his company, the Policy Solutions Lab. His current clients include the United Nations, where he holds a senior advisor position at the Italy-based United Nations Inter-Regional Crime and Justice Research Institute, and other governmental and non-governmental organizations. Dr. Sabet has recently served as the only non-medical doctor on the writing committee establishing the official position on marijuana legalization for the American Society of Addiction Medicine. Ladies and gentlemen, presenting the con side of the argument today, Dr. Kevin Sabet.
Can I use this?
Yes, you may.
Great. Well, I want to, can you all hear me okay?
Do you have slides? Or?
I don't have slides. I decided to go slide free, which is a nice change for me. But I want to thank you all for being here. I was last at Wayne State for a law symposium on this issue a couple of years ago. Obviously, the issue has evolved to urgency. In 2 weeks, hopefully most of you will be at the polls and you'll be voting on this. And hopefully by the end of our talk today, I hope you'll be voting no. Let me tell you why. Let me start out by saying I don't really care if you smoke marijuana. I don't care if you're an adult using it in the privacy of your own home. And I certainly don't think people should go to prison for marijuana. I don't think you should be arrested. I think we have a false dichotomy between basically criminalization and the war on drugs and legalization. And really commercialization is what we talk about with legalization. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. But I served the longest for President Obama, 2.5 years, where we strived and achieved some criminal justice reform that I'm very proud of. But ironically, and this relates to marijuana, a lot of the criminal justice reform we wanted to achieve was blocked by Congress, and it was blocked by the leader of Congress at that time. You remember that guy, John Boehner, from a neighboring state. The same guy that blocked, and this is a perfect analogy to legalization, the same guy that blocked criminal justice reform, sensible reforms. We wanted to invest in treatment over incarceration. We wanted to invest in things like banning private prisons, all things that I very much believe in. So you might be surprised that the anti-guy is saying that he believes in that. But he does, and our organization does. But the guy that blocked us from doing a lot of that work is now the same guy, you might have heard, that last month agreed to be a paid consultant for the marijuana industry, now making about $100,000, we think, at least per speech, and has all of a sudden had an epiphany about marijuana that I think came with a big fat paycheck. Legalization is about one thing and one thing only, and it's not social justice. I wish it was. It's not even about medicine, and frankly, we don't have a lot of time. I love talking about medical marijuana and those issues. I'm not talking about that today, other than I'm at a school of pharmacy, so I have to kind of get one little dig in, which is I kind of want pharmacists and scientists to determine what medicine is, not political campaigns and governors and legislators and special interests. It's very weird to me that we're voting on any medicine. I don't care if it's marijuana or whatever, but I'll put that to the side. If you are truly sick and ill and you need components of marijuana that are helpful, I absolutely think we should do more research. We have done a lot of research, but we should do more, and because we can always do more, and I hope it's helpful for people. But that is not what I'm talking about today. That's not what the initiative at all is about in 2 weeks from now. The initiative is about legalization, and it's really about commercialization. And as I said, it's not about social justice, it's about money. It's about profits for a small number of people who are already rich, who have the connections, who have the tens of millions of dollars of capital it takes to start a pot business and be successful in it, who don't have any criminal records, because good luck getting a loan as a felony or even a misdemeanor on your record. And it's really written by special interests. In fact, in this state, this is, Michigan will have the dubious distinction of an initiative that was pushed and funded partly by big tobacco money. Now, let's talk about big tobacco for a second. Big tobacco turned a relatively benign substance, tobacco, which was used for thousands of years without anybody getting lung cancer. That changed in the late 1800s when we invented something called the cigarette. It's a very new invention. The cigarette was for the first time able to take tobacco and add something called nicotine, add ammonia and a lot of other additives to make it much sweeter so that you could blend British and Indian tobacco and take it in a way that was portable and very pleasant and sweet to use. The pipes were very harsh. You can't use a pipe all day unless you're very used to it. It's very harsh on your lungs. It doesn't taste that great. You have to get a lot of it taken used to. But with smoking, the tobacco industry took this in the late 1800s, and with the Industrial Revolution, we had an automated cigarette machine for the first time in our history. So they were able to take this, go to Madison Avenue, market the hell out of it, get good old American symbolism, a cowboy, remember the Marlboro Man? Put a cartoon on it, remember Joe Camel? A lot of young people here, they have no idea what I'm talking about, but we actually had a cartoon selling cigarettes, but you're not going to believe it, Google it. And the issue is, they took something that was like kind of harmful, not great for you, but wasn't causing 450,000 deaths a year as it did last year. That's 10 times as many people dying from opiates, folks. You think we have an opiate epidemic? We have an epidemic of legal drugs pushed by an industry that wants to get rich, that makes it as easy as possible to normalize, commercialize, and promote what they want to promote. So now we have marijuana. Certainly benign compared to heroin and a lot of other drugs, especially alcohol. But now you have THC that's been extracted and put into gummy bears, put into lollipops, all legal under this proposal, put into waxes, dabs that are 99% concentrated. When your parents were smoking a little marijuana, if they did, they were using 5% THC. That was Woodstock weed. And so you now have unlimited potency, which is what this proposal does, unlimited amounts. Actually, the amounts, there is a limit, but it's the highest limit in the country per possession. You have no restrictions on advertising. You have no restrictions on THC levels. You have no provisions that say, you know what, if it's legal, maybe the pot industry shouldn't determine the laws and be on the regulatory body. They wrote the law. They're going to be a part of the regulatory body. It's like having Philip Morris regulate tobacco. And so even if you're in favor of legalization, this is a very bad proposal unless you happen to be one of about 9 people in this country getting very rich off of legal pot. And the people getting rich off of legal pot, I hate stuff. They don't live in Detroit. I'm just going to be very honest with you. They live in Wall Street, and they live in Silicon Valley. They're the ones that have access to people in power and to be able to innovate, and they've marketed these things before. And the tobacco and alcohol industries are now fully invested in the pot industry. Please look it up yourself and take my word for it. So I'm not here to tell you pot is the demon drug. Today's marijuana is a lot more harmful than we once thought. We can laugh about the donut thing, but it does kill a lot of people on the road. Gordon McDougal is a Michigander whose son died 1 year ago last week, driving home from prom while he was dabbing. He died instantly, 17 years old. You'll be seeing a lot more of him maybe in the last week of this campaign. But the issue is, I'm not saying everybody gets into that car crash or has schizophrenia, psychosis, even though it's linked with marijuana. I'm not saying. In fact, most people who try marijuana are fine. They're just fine. They use it a few times. They actually don't like it. And it's not a majority of people that have a problem with it. Just like I know none of us have ever sped on a freeway here before, right? Yeah. Most people who speed are also just fine, but we discourage speed. There's a reason for speed limits. Not because we want to throw you in prison if you go 5 miles over, but we want to discourage you from going really fast because you're increasing and you're hurting people around you. But just like most people who smoke cigarettes will not get lung cancer, that's true. But it's also true that smoking is inextricably linked with lung cancer and that your chances of getting lung cancer go up 8-fold. We can talk to driving experts. Most people who don't wear a seatbelt actually don't die in a car crash. Dirty little secret. Doesn't mean you shouldn't wear a seatbelt. Most people who smoke marijuana are fine. The issue is not about that. The issue is about, do we want a massive industry, which is the way this has been written, and do we want the problems that that brings? I absolutely think we should decriminalize the use of marijuana. We should remove criminal penalties. We should not be putting people in prison or giving them a criminal record. But I don't think that the answer to social justice is getting a couple guys that, again, I'm going to be very honest with you, it's been a long day. Getting a couple guys that look like me richer. Because that is exactly what this movement is about. It's not about everybody who does this. I'm not saying everyone involved with Barton and others are like in it for the money. John Boehner is, yeah, that's true. The tobacco industry is. It's not like they're like the hippies of the tobacco industry. No, they want to make money. The alcohol industry that just gave $4 billion to Constellation Brands in Canada, who gave it to Canopy, it's called largest medical marijuana company in Canada, they want to make money. And the CEO of Purdue Pharma, the guy that wrote the playbook on how to addict Americans on OxyContin, I'm not making this up, please Google it yourself. The BBC did a story about it in 2016. The CEO of Purdue Pharma during that time is now the CEO of a marijuana company. It's not like he became the CEO of a marijuana company because he all of a sudden is like a civil rights leader in social justice. I don't think so. He's not really part of that movement, but he is part of the movement to get rich, and that's really what this is about. Now, it's going to take, I'm not going to give you the horror stories from Colorado. It's going to take 20 years until we figure out what exactly is going on there. What I can tell you is that that tax revenue isn't very substantial. It's less than 1/10 of 1% of their total budget. It has not paved roads of gold and money flowing down and the schools all rebuilt. In fact, you already have legal drugs here that give you tax revenue. How's that going? Has the lottery revenue, because a lot of people buy lottery tickets, you have #1 schools in the country yet from lottery? Where's that money going? What about alcohol? You tax alcohol. Tobacco is more taxed today than it ever has been in the United States. Where is that tax money going to? Do you have free treatment for anyone who wants tobacco treatment at the forget about the schools. Just can we treat people who have a problem with tobacco? 1 in 3 smokers are addicted. Can we treat them if they want it for free? No. That money doesn't, this idea of free money, folks, we've heard about it, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And there are also costs to such a policy. There are costs to the worker productivity. There are costs to, let me tell you the amount of frivolous lawsuits that are going to happen. There are costs to the drug and driving crashes that are going on that may or may not be related to marijuana. Marilyn Eustace, who was referred to a lot, is on my board. She's on the scientific advisory board of the group I started with Patrick Kennedy called SAM, Smart Approaches to Marijuana. We don't want to lock people up in prison. It was founded by myself and that really neoconservative Patrick Kennedy. Ted Kennedy's son, it's a joke. Liberal lion of the Senate. His son and myself founded SAM. We didn't found SAM so we could be moralistic. We're not moralistic on this. We're not trying to bring some religious fervor and judge people who use marijuana. Again, I'm under 40. I get it. A lot of people, a lot of my friends, they're fine. But the issue is, do we want to commercialize, normalize, and promote this? All I ask you to do is don't take anybody's word for it up here. Do your own research, including mine. Don't take my word for it. Read the initiative yourself. See if it makes sense to you. See if it seems like social justice. And then I'll leave you with a stat, and I think my time probably almost done. I have 3 minutes. There are more African American and Latino youth arrested for pot now in Colorado than before legalization. Now wait a minute. How did that happen, you're thinking? Well, it's illegal to use in public. It's illegal to use while you're driving. It's illegal to use on federal housing. By the way, this is federally illegal still, so who knows if Jeff Sessions is going to be around in 2 weeks, but if he gets off the wrong side of the bed one day and wants to arrest everybody in legal state and cut off, that can absolutely happen. It's all against federal law. I find it very difficult to say we want federal law in one area and no federal law in another area when that federal law is in play. Now you can say repeal the federal law, fine. But if federal law is there, the idea that we're picking and choosing, I want a federal immigration and federal gun law, but I don't want to enforce federal drug laws, look, we got to think about that for a minute. And the folks that are being arrested, of course, are the most vulnerable communities. Let me tell you something, if a cop wants to arrest you, they will find reasons to arrest you. Legalized marijuana isn't like, oh, now everyone's going to be race unity and we're all going to get along from the criminal justice system. And in Washington, D.C., there are also more African American youth arrested now, since the time that they started sort of their modified legalization. So, look, I think the legislature needs to next year draft a decriminalization law. They need to draft a law that makes sure that we do have some kind of social justice, and that's harder to do than just legalize it. Legalize it sounds great, but it's an overly simplistic and I think counterproductive, obviously, solution. We need something that says, well, what are the penalties? How can we reduce them? How do we make sure the fines aren't burdensome? Do you need treatment or not? That takes like work. You can't just slap something on a ballot initiative because you have $2 million from big tobacco and then say, we're going to solve the problems. You're not going to that way. So I would just ask you to read the proposal yourself. Please do your own research. If you're curious about the harms of marijuana, which I didn't really talk about today, Ballotpedia may be good for the ballots, but Wikipedia for research, not really, especially when the pot industry edits it every second. Read the WHO, World Health Organization report of the United Nations from 2016. Read the National Academy of Sciences report. Read the Royal Institute of Psychiatry if you don't believe U.S. research. Read the research from the UK. Read the research from Australia. Read the research from Sweden. Read the research from abroad that talks about today's high-potent marijuana and how that is affecting not just youth and your developing brain, but even adults as well. I don't think we should demonize it. I don't think I'm saying it's not worse than heroin or whatever. Of course not. But I'm saying when you make a drug illegal in this country now, if you're talking about Norway or something, okay, we can talk about that. But in this country, that means you are commercializing it. You are leaving it to the bounds of capitalism, which know no bounds, advertising and promotion. High potent THC, no limits on this proposal. And I hope you do your research and come to an informed decision, and I hope your fellow Michiganders do the same. Thanks for listening to me.